All right, so over the weekend, the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee rolling out the top 16 teams as we move closer to Selection Sunday, and by no surprise, when it comes to that #1 overall seed, it belongs to Gonzaga. I mean, I figure we could have said that probably about 2-3 weeks ago. The Zags holding on to a 22-2 record, almost perfect, not to mention a 5-2 mark when it comes to the Quadrant 1 opponents. The Bulldogs have spent the entire season pretty much in the top 5 as they hold on to that #1, the AP polls. Check it out how it looks, and when it comes to those top 4 seeds, the Zags, Auburn there in the Midwest, in the South, Arizona and Kansas. Others, of course, you got to keep eyes on. Texas and Tennessee, along with Providence, we just saw there out in that 4th position in the South. Remember, Selection Sunday is just a few weeks away. All right, time to welcome in senior college basketball writer Jerry Palm to kind of help us with this a little bit. And Jerry, Auburn is on that 1 line. Some believe they were almost close to Gonzaga there, but how did that loss to Florida kind of set them back from getting that #1 overall?
Well, I mean, it doesn't eliminate them from that happening, but that's not really dependent on Auburn anyway. That's going to be dependent on Gonzaga, because if Gonzaga keeps rolling through the West Coast Conference, they're going to be the overall #1. But for at least for now, the loss for Auburn has dropped them below Arizona on the top line of the bracket. So now Arizona is 2, Auburn is 3. The committee, when they released this bracket the other day, talked about how those 3 teams were pretty close together and that there was a little bit of a gap between them and #4 Kansas. And Auburn is closing that gap a little bit, but it's not closed yet.
All right, we'll see how that pans out, as you mentioned there, when it comes to the Zags and others, Arizona, Auburn, and Kansas. But, Jerry, I want you to give me 5 teams based on what you've seen so far that can really win it all in your eyes at this point.
Yeah, it's a bigger list than 5, but it starts with Gonzaga, who's been the dominant team in college basketball the last 2/3 of this season. And, you know, they're loaded. They got Chet Holmgren, they got Drew Timme, Nebhard. I mean, this is a team that's really going to be difficult to match up with. And they're probably going to be the favorite entering the NCAA tournament. Also, Auburn, despite the loss yesterday, they've got who might be the #1 pick in the draft, and Jabari Smith, Kessler. This is a team that's loaded as well, and the best team in the SEC. Kansas, you can't rule out. You know, all of these teams, they're really talented, and they've been successful against good schedules, and they all have, you know, NBA guys. For Kansas, it's Abaji. You need that kind of a thing to get to the Final Four, and that's something that's been consistent over time. If you haven't got a next level guy, you're probably not going to advance too far in this tournament. And so then that brings me to the 4th team, Kentucky. Of course, Ty Washington figures to be a high draft pick. They've also got one of the leaders for College Player of the Year in Oscar Tshiebwe. So that's a team when they're healthy, and that's been kind of hit and miss lately, that you'd really have to watch out for. And finally, Purdue, a matchup nightmare in the post with Travion Williams and Zach Edey, 7 guys that shoot 40% from 3-point range, and they shoot that percentage as a team as well. They're so difficult to defend. And of course, Jaden Ivey is a game changer with the ball in his hand. The problem potentially for Purdue is, do they defend well enough if they get into a game where the shots aren't falling?
Competition in the Big Ten as well as the Big 12. We've mentioned how competitive that conference is. Texas Tech, they've been busy and been running through Texas, by the way. They beat Baylor Wednesday, but also getting the sweep over Texas. How big of a week has it been for them out there in the Big 12?
Yeah, Texas Tech is having a great year, and I don't think this much at least was expected of them, especially with the coaching change. But, you know, Mark Adams has done a great job with this team. They have 3 wins over Baylor and Kansas. Like you said, they swept Texas. This is a very competitive league. There are no bad losses to be had anywhere in this league. Even the teams that are not going to make the tournament are good teams. So, you know, it's been a really great season for Texas Tech. They belong on that 3 line. By the time we get to Selection Sunday, they may have even earned a spot on that 2 line, and I would not be surprised.
All right, let's look at the ACC a little bit. Wake Forest in an interesting conversation here, trying to improve their resume. They got to win over Notre Dame. Where do you have them sitting right now?
I have Wake Forest among the last 4 in. In fact, I think the last team in is Wake Forest. The ACC is having a very down year. It's Duke, and they're a potential national champion that I didn't mention. But, you know, you have an enormous gap to the rest of the teams in this league. The only other 3 that are in the bracket are Notre Dame, Miami, and Wake Forest, and that's it. And they're all bottom half of the bracket teams. And that's just a reflection of the kind of season that the ACC is having. It may be that the ACC only ends up putting 3 teams in the NCAA tournament, and that would be newsworthy.
As you mentioned there, not much of resume building for them. They got Clemson, Louisville, and NC State. Down year in the ACC there. As always, Jerry Palm, as always, appreciate you breaking everything down. The Eye College Basketball Podcast. And guys, probably going to recap everything we saw on the weekend. But, of course, Juwan Howard and Greg Gard, that squabble there between Michigan and Wisconsin. The melee, the latest on their pod. Download, give them a follow.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.